Hi, welcome to Tales of Dread. In our neighborhood, there was someone who caught dogs. He was known as the Dogman. He would drive his white van and corral around. He put any lost dogs he saw into his van and took them to a place where people put lost dogs. He wasn't a bad guy. He was proud of his job and the fact that he was keeping our neighborhood safe. A Rottweiler once came running at me and started barking. The Dogman's white van pulled up. Even when he got to our side of the street, the dog didn't wait for him. When the dog catcher came near, this huge dog fight champion ran away with his tail between his legs. The dog catcher came up to me and asked if I was okay. I told him that the dog had knocked me down. He patted me on the head and smiled, telling me that he was going to whoop him up for me. I didn't really understand what he was saying, so he ruffled my hair and went back to the van. The Dogman didn't seem strange at all. He seemed like any other hard-working person in the area. He was very happy with what he did. He would sometimes brag and make up stories about how he caught champion dogs from dogfights with nothing but his bare hands, a biscuit, and a handkerchief. He looked like just another uncle who didn't have any nephews. When you think about it, his family was not seen. He never mentioned them, no one ever knew where he lived. No one really cared, though, because he was too nice to hang out with all the time. Then the pets began to go missing. This made everyone very worried. In a white suburb, pets were like sons and daughters with fur. Then people saw that it wasn't just pets that were going missing. Only the dogs were there. I told the dog guy about this, and he seemed really worried. As if he had just learned it. His friends were nowhere to be found. He promised to find out what was going on. He no longer smiled the way he always did. It had been replaced by a cold, hard look, but he still had some kind of emotion hidden in his eyes. Was it drive? Fear? He got in his van and took off in it. Jeff, who is my best friend, lost his dog. He couldn't stop crying about it. I tried to make him feel better by telling him that nothing could have taken him away because he was as big as a bicycle. Jeff, he'll be back. Just you wait. I told him that to try to cheer him up. He said, "No, Ralph, none of them have come back. No one ever does." When he gave me a sad look, I knew it was time to leave. On my way out, I walked through the front hall and out the door. I saw something. A dog-shaped figure. It was on Jeff's kitchen table next to an open envelope with the words, Sandy, and the name of Jeff's dog written in rough handwriting. Grossly misspelled even though the writing was very bad. The figurine had a lot of details that surprised me. It looked like it was painted by hand and sad. Sandy with all of her dog glory. Jeff's mom was talking on the phone while she stood near it. She waved at me as I walked by, and I waved back. As I left, I heard something about not having a return address. I started heading back home. We lived in a small white house that was the same as all the other small white houses in the neighborhood. I saw someone step on our neighbor's black toy poodle. It was sleeping in the afternoon sun, and the person sneaking up on it didn't seem to wake it up. "Hey," I said. The people turned around. The Dogman did it. The poodle turned around and saw the Dogman sneaking up on her. She started barking and running away. The Dogman turned his whole body to face me and asked if I was okay. "Why did you come up behind that dog?" I asked in a way that was accusatory. "I only wanted to pet her." "Is all," he said, silkenly a little pouty. He didn't look like a bad person. Now we know that this wasn't the person who took Jeff's dog. I was thinking to myself. I quickly said I was sorry, and he said, "No worries, mate. I understand," and the dog man gave me a wink as he told me that he knew I was worried that he was going to take her away. His face turned as hard as stone. "Why do you think they are being taken away?" He almost grabbed one of my shoulders in a panic as he asked. I pulled away from him and ran away. When I turned around, he was walking away from me toward the forest. I told my mom how strange the dog man was acting when I got home. She made me feel better and told me to go to bed that night. When I went to sleep, I dreamed about a horrible whimpering sound coming from the woods and being stopped by a house. I thought it was right behind my ears, it was so loud. I woke up suddenly and saw a man walking by my window with a bag slung over his shoulder. He turned his head toward my window, as if he knew I was looking at him. The dog man did it. He gave me a quick smile and then walked slowly, deliberately, and sure of himself into the woods. I tried to fall asleep again, but I couldn't. The thought of Jeff's dog rotting away in a cave or alone in the woods or wherever this sick funk had put the dog was too much for me to handle. I had to be sure. I thought that was how much I owed Jeff. He had a right to find out what had happened to his dog. I got downstairs quietly. Since it was 12 a.m., my mom was probably sound asleep. I put on my coat and boots quietly and snuck out of the house. It was a clear night, so I would have enough light from the moon. But I didn't want to risk it, so I got a flashlight. I'd rather be safe than sorry. Right? I also got another kitchen knife. Better to be safe. I went into the woods where the dog man had gone and noticed that there was no sound. It seemed like there were no animals out there. For miles, there was nothing but trees. It made me feel sad. I kept going. After what seemed like an hour of walking, we finally got there. I got to the old house. It used to be white, but half of the white paint had worn off, revealing mold and rotting wood. A cruel sign painted on the front of the doghouse to test it. When I think about it now, it was a lot like the writing on the envelope. So he was responsible. All. That sick person had walked with us while we were worried about the dogs. He took us hostage while acting like he was our friend. I had to know what was on the other side of that door. I saw it was only half open. It let light shine through. The flashlight wouldn't be necessary. Then I put it back and moved on. Even though the outside had been broken, the inside didn't look too bad. It was sparsely decorated but not falling apart. On an old TV, there was an Animal Channel show about dogs. The volume was turned down as low as it could go. I looked in the opposite direction. He was repainting some oil paintings and figurines of dogs to make them look like the dogs. He thought that oddly creative was a sign of a psychopath. I looked over at the tiny kitchen. He only had a half-full bag of dog food to eat. What did he eat at that time? He might be eating dogs. I tried to get rid of the thought. I saw that a bowl was on the floor. Just one. On this floor, there were no dogs, and there was only one bowl. He couldn't have used it to eat out of. The thought made me feel sick. What did this man do wrong? Did he think he was some kind of dog? People put his clothes on the couch. Good. He probably went to bed. His bedroom would probably be on the second floor. I found it easy to check the basement. In this way. As I got closer to the door to the basement, I heard a small, sad sound. I thought it might be Sandy. I went down the mean, creaky stairs and saw what was probably the most horrifying thing I had ever seen. Dog bodies were all over the floor, with big chunks taken out of their faces and throats. Some of them were skinned, and their fur was hung out to dry next to their dead bodies. I almost threw up when I saw and smelled it. The smell was so strong. It tasted good. There were still some dogs that were alive. Very poor nutrition. The anuses of these ones were bleeding. In the end, I found out that he was raping them. One was a black poodle from the yard of my next-door neighbor. It was moving around a lot. I went to the middle of the room and saw him lying on a pile of furs, naked except for a mask of a porter named Carly. Was the man with the dog? He had blood all over him. I almost screamed because I thought he had found me, but then I saw that he was asleep. Sandy was asleep next to him and tied to a leash that he held in his hand. As soon as the dog saw me, it started to cry louder. The dog man began to wake up. I'd have to move quickly. I snuck up on the dog man and Joyce and asked, "Is Sandy awake?" When she saw me, she began to lick my face. I took the leash off of her and pushed her up the stairs. No one knew where she would go next. Maybe Jeff's house, but anywhere else would have been better than this. I heard something growl behind me. Not dog growling, human growling. I was surprised to see that the dog man got up on all fours. I ran out of the basement so fast that the Olympic teeter-totters would have been embarrassed. I could hear him growling, snarling, and howling behind me. Just when I thought I could slow down, I could feel his hot breath behind me and hear him panting closer, so I had to push myself even harder. I got to the edge of the woods, but I don't know how. I turned around and saw the dog man on all fours and without his mask. He must have dropped it on the way. He howled at the sky and walked back into the woods. But he didn't look the same. He was covered in fur, even on his face, which was different from before I passed out. When I woke up at home, it looked like it was getting close to noon outside. How long did I stay away? Sweetheart, my mom was sitting on my bed with me. She asked, "What were you doing in the middle of the night near the woods?" She said this in such a sweet, innocent, motherly way. It hurt me deeply. I told her what had happened while I was crying out of fear. She said it would all be alright, that they'd tell his bosses that he wouldn't be a dog catcher anymore. That Jeff's dog made it home and was okay now, but that they needed me to tell me where he lived. I told her I loved her and she said the same through tears of her own. The next day a search party was sent out consisting of pet owners and policemen. They went into the woods back to that damn dog howls and they found it. They found everything I described. I think maybe 5 of the 25 or so dogs abducted made it out alive, and those dogs were viciously sodomized and abused by that monster. The only thing they didn't find was the dog man. They contacted the people who have employed him, and they said there was no dog catcher registered for that area as far as they knew. He never existed, he never got his name, so we could never find him. For all I know, the dog man could still be out there today, and he probably still is, whatever he is.